What's up, everybody? I am Dr. Lisa. I'm coming back at you with another fact of life. And today we're going to talk about the importance of understanding that tests do not determine intelligence. Tests only determine your capability based off of what information was regurgitated to you and whether that information that was regurgitated to you was done effectively. It does not determine if someone is actually capable of doing said learning that is required. It is only effective in determining whether that training meets the standard that someone has implemented or wants that standard to be met. So, when it comes to us and all this testing and things that we've done as we've grown up, or, our children have gone through, it doesn't necessarily mean that your child is not smart because they fall below the 50th percentile. It just means that they weren't trained in a proper way. There's only very, 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 very few that are just incapable of learning if they are not if learning is taught to them effectively. You have to remember that we as people, we learn in different ways. Some of us learn by doing, some of us learn by hearing, some of us learn by seeing, some of us learn by a combination of things. So you can't necessarily assume because you sit in a classroom or you sit in a training at work, whether it's via computer or just sitting there listening to someone talk and then they answer a few questions. There's no guarantee that everything that's being gone through is going to necessarily be on that test. And just because it's on that test and you pass that test, that does not mean that you're going to later on go on to your job or go on out into society and 100% know what you're doing, because there's always a gap in the amount of information that you have been taught. That's why a lot of people, they graduate high school and they feel as though they know nothing, because a lot of the information that they were taught was only information that the environment that they went to said was important. It wasn't what really is important for you to do what you need to do to be successful in the world. So that's why it's important for us to understand that people, when they enter the workplace and you're being tested just to get that job and you don't get that job, that does not necessarily mean that that person that's created that test even knew what they were doing. They're going by the basic archaic approaches and styles that have been regurgitated throughout society to say that someone needs to know how to do this information. And if they understand how to pass this test, then that means that they're going to do good on the job. It does not necessarily mean that. And that's where HR falls short, because HR, like always, falls in line and never says that a test determines efficiency and effectiveness and someone's a capability. They allow for this ideology to continuously be pushed instead of ensuring that people understand that just because you can pass a test does not mean that you are capable. And that's why I speak so much about the importance of evaluation and why I do evaluation with the type of work that I do, because you have to always go in and ask the questions. Someone could pass a test and just be dumb as a rock. And that's just what it is. And it doesn't mean that they're not capable either. It just means that they're dumb as a rock when it comes to whatever information that they truly need to know. And that's not their fault. It is how society has created and made us view who's more important because they've passed the test and who is not important because they didn't. And that doesn't mean that someone should be treated any less. It just means that you need to support them. And support is where everything needs to come in for people to understand, for people to be effective in what area of work or whatever area of education that you're in. If you are not effectively supported, not provided an environment where you can effectively learn and know the information that you actually need to know, then only then can you be successful. And that doesn't matter what you're doing in life. That's why you can see people that cannot do well in a true actual learning environment, but can go on YouTube, learn something, and be so effective with it. It's because they're able to take their time with it and learn it at their own pace, and then from there go on and ask questions to whoever created the information, or go further by, now we have AI, going and asking the AI to help them to understand as well. So there's so many ways to learn, and this is why the education system will continue to be structured, if not dismantled, because there's so much access to free information now, and society is going to have to understand that people are capable, without having to do all these different standards that have been created, types of learning, and be just as effective, just as successful as the individual that's gone on and done years of college and then probably still has gaps in the type of information that they actually need. And that's where it's important, as I've said before, for HR and other individuals that create curriculum and implement different types of learning and training, for them to understand that it's not just how you're teaching the information, it's if that information is actually necessary and going to be valid later on. And if so, if there is gaps or lapse in why people aren't using the information, you need to ask those questions as to why. So it's going to be a constant need for communication and people willing to ask those hard questions and not get defensive because of what they created or what they feel people need to know isn't effective. And that's all it is. All it is just because you fail a test, it doesn't mean you're not smart. And just because somebody has passed a test, it doesn't mean that they are smart. It's all about what that information is, how someone is retaining it, and how they're using it, and if the information that they're using is viable and reliable and valid. And that's just what it is. And hopefully, as we keep going on and as we as a people start to push the understanding that that is what true learning is and that's what true success is, we'll have a better place and more opportunities for everyone. And it will help to balance out this imbalance that keeps trying to happen in how society is going about things. Hopefully, we can continue to push back on that. Well, until then, I hope that this has been valuable information for everyone. And I hope that you be well, love yourself and others. Bye.